How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys, Alex and Ryan. So, another loss yesterday. 4 losses in a row. The Yankees are in disarray. Aaron Judge is saying it's not good enough. Boone's saying it's not good enough. Everyone's saying it's not good enough. We know this is true. We know this is a fact. But Luis Severino goes up out there and gives up 5 earned runs. It's been bad for Sevy. It's just, the 3-run homer to open the game in the first inning. I don't even know what to say anymore. This is Severino's worst season as a professional, and it is evident that he is mentally compromised. He is not confident enough to play baseball at a high level, to pitch at a high level. He is not, his location is off, his accuracy is off. But we want to dive into the concept of, is there reason to believe he could bounce back next year? And is it worthwhile for Brian Cashman to maybe bring him back on a cheaper prove-it deal? I don't know how much he'll get on free agency, but he could get, 6, 7, 8 plus $1 million for a season. Pitching is expensive. A lot of teams may see him as a bounce back candidate. This year has been exceptionally bad. We want to kind of take a look at the numbers for you, break down exactly what's happening so you guys can get a clearer picture of why Severino is struggling like this and why there may be some legs to extending him on a prove-it deal, cheaper contract. Of course, we picked up his player option at $15 million, or a club option at $15 million. And it hasn't carried his weight. So Ryan, before we dive into Luis Severino, kind of what he would offer this team, what's going on with him right now, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing all right. I think yesterday was kind of a weird start because it felt like there were flashes, right? You look at that start and you're like, hey, there are things here, tangibly speaking, that should be areas of growth. You think the Austin Riley at bat, he just absolutely dominates Riley, and you're like, okay, we're fine, right? And then he walks Olsen, but you're thinking to yourself, okay, Matt Olsen is red hot. It's a fine idea to walk Matt Olsen and face Marcell Ozuna, and then he hangs a pitch, and Ozuna gets all of it, right? You think of the second home run, right? IKF makes an error, should have been out of the inning. Acuna comes up, he gives up the home run. I don't think we're at a point with Luis Severino where we can sit back and really say, all right, yesterday was a big start for him because at the end of the day, it just wasn't a great one. It was solid. It was okay. He still had issues with command. But, in terms of velocity, that's the real thing that stands out, right? That is the thing that, was kind of the storyline of yesterday's game. He was sitting, high 90s. He was throwing as hard as he ever has, right? And it just didn't click for him. In terms of vertical movement, it's still not there. And that's so frustrating to see, especially for a guy who's as talented as Luis Severino, right? When you think, okay, the velocity's back, that means the pitch shape has to be back, right? And, in some cases, earlier in the season, we saw that the vertical movement was there, but in this start in particular, he was seeing 97.9 miles per hour, but his induced vertical break on his fastball is 15.1 inches. Now, for those who don't know what induced vertical break is, that's just movement without gravity involved for, we're talking again vertical, so north-south, right? You want to be more 16, 17, 18. If you're at 15 inches for a 4-seam fastball, that's considered dead zone. That's a very hittable pitch, and that's why that pitch has been hit hard all season. So yes, it's being thrown hard, but without the movement profile to make it a plus pitch, it's really fallen off the map. And I guess it could be a mechanical thing, like maybe Luis Severino isn't getting fully behind the baseball. When we're thinking about backspin, right? That's what creates that vertical movement. You got to get the ball moving this way. Is Severino getting all of his spin there? Who knows? Is he generating enough force on the ball to get it, backspin and get it riding up in the zone? Who knows? But end of the day, the injuries, just the movement not being there, I feel like he's more in the cooked category than bounce back category at this point, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. I don't think I've ever been this low on Luis Severino in my life.
Yeah, look, the reality is kind of simple. When you're looking at Severino's season, let's take a look at his pitches because, this is where you're going to see some of the worst stuff. He's in the 1 percentile in xERA, xWOBA, 6 percentile in hard hit rate. His chase rate's 52 percentile, the velocity 76 percentile, which is good. The average exit velocity 21st percentile. He is just bad across the board at 29 years old. Maybe the injuries have caught up to him, but let's kind of play devil's advocate here and see exactly, what's going on, because we'll break down the pitches. I'll give you some examples of, why there may be some life left to Severino, but let's take a look at his fastball first and foremost. He's throwing his fastball at 47.2% this year, the 4-seamer that is, similar to last year at 48.2%. This year, generating a 363 batting average against with an 18.5% whiff rate and 15.7% put away rate. Last year, it generated a .186 batting average against with a 20.7% whiff rate and 16.7% put away rate. So, you're looking at all these pitches. The changeup has seen massive regression. The sweeper, the slider, is basically a non-factor at this point. The slider is generating a 3.22 average against, whereas it produced a 1.69 average last year with a 41.7% whiff rate, which was exponentially better than the 23.5% whiff rate that it's producing this year. So, let's see the inches of break here. Like the four-seam fastball, 13.6 inches of vertical movement, 7 inches of horizontal break. But then last year it was at 12.2% and 7.6%, a horizontal movement. Like the inches, in fact, it's getting more vertical movement this year, which is weird. Maybe that's a bad thing. The slider, 41 inches of vertical movement compared to 40 inches last year. 10.5 horizontal. Like the break doesn't seem like it's that significantly off that it should be, marking this much of a difference. I mean, the four-seam fastball, the spin rate, dude, is 2,257 RPMs, the same exact. They're identical metrics. So you're seeing like the velocity is up. The break seems to be kind of similar. Why is the location and the accuracy so off? Why is it? And that's what's leading me to believe that it's more mental than anything. If you're looking at all of that stuff, what is your take on it? Because the numbers look similar. They don't look astronomically different. Why is it that he's performing worse, but the spin rates, the velocity are all pretty similar to what they've been in the past, but batters are just hitting it better? In my opinion, it has to be he's in his own head. It has to be poor accuracy, poor location, poor pitch setup. I don't necessarily know. There's probably a lot more that goes into this and I'm unaware of, but what is your take on that?
Yeah, so I think that it's hard. So number one, you have to look at command as like a margin of error thing, right? How many guys can miss in zone and still have success, right? Let's use Shohei Ohtani for example. I know that's an upper echelon pitcher, but I think it's a good reason to use. I think there's a good reason to use him. His command isn't necessarily great, but his stuff is so good that there's a larger margin for error for where he misses his pitches, right? If he misses a sweeper up in the zone, it is going to get hit from time to time, but he'll get success on it more times than Luis Severino will if Severino misses with his slider in the zone. Four-seam fastballs, right? Let's look Garrett Cole and Luis Severino. Both of these guys throw really hard, and in terms of velocity, they're actually not too far off. So you may look at these two guys and say they have the same caliber of fastball, but there's a difference in the movement profiles. Again, Garrett Cole gets more induced vertical break. He gets more vertical movement. So when Garrett Cole misses middle high with a four-seam fastball, he can get away with it from time to time. When Severino does, he can't because it doesn't have the same deceptive action that Cole's does. So stuff plays a big role in how often you can miss with your command, and the lower your stuff is, the better your command has to get. And it's not like Luis Severino's ever had bad command, but it's not like his command is 80 grade or anything of the sort. So when we see a stuff decrease like that, you're going to see a massive decrease in performance. And another thing too is when you come back from injury, you need to get a feel of the baseball. So command is one of the last things to come together when it comes to a guy returning from injury. And Severino is not returning from one injury or two injuries. He's returning from a multitude of serious injuries. So we're talking about a guy who really hasn't gotten a consistent feel of a major league mound over the course of the last 4 years. So end of the day, when you take away the feel, when you take away the reps that help you establish command, and then you decrease the stuff on your pitches, it's going to lead to something like this. And it's something that you're going to have to stay healthy to work through, right? Severino, we don't even know if Severino can finish this season. It's not completely improbable that Severino has like a shoulder thing that comes up over the next couple of weeks, right? And unfortunately, that's just life. Like, you can't control how injury prone you are. But, the tough thing with bringing Severino back or trying to fix him or trying to rework his game is that it relies upon him staying healthy enough for you to get him back to where he needs to be. And that has been a problem for him for a while. And then you add on the depreciating stuff and the added injuries. And at this point, I think he just cut ties.
And that's a totally fair perspective, right? Like, that's totally fair to say, I think we just both sides need a fresh start. We got to take that money and reallocate it elsewhere. And I think that's a very probable thing the Yankees could do. I just wonder, if the market is going to be thin, and it is going to be thin, and the Yankees don't want to spend top dollar, what's the alternative here? Like, you go with Johnny Brito, you go Randy Vasquez, maybe you trade for somebody during the offseason. What is your preference to replace Severino? Is it going with youth, or is it going with free agent signings?
So I think it depends, right? I think that if the Yankees go with a rotation that has Schmidt and Brito at the bottom of the rotation, you're going to feel a little bit uncertain about things because those are two guys who, Schmidt, you're still figuring out. Brito, you're still figuring out. And then you have Cole, Rodon, and Cortez. Cole, you expect to get through a full season. You don't expect the same for Rodon and Cortez. These guys are not only, even if they stay healthy, the Yankees are not pushing these guys to 180, 190 innings. They threw 30 innings, 40 innings this year. They're not built up to do that again. So I think that the Yankees are going to have to go out and get a starter. That doesn't necessarily mean that fifth starter job is automatically going to be handed to Schmidt. But it does mean that, it's also not, it does mean the Yankees are going to have to look externally. And just for a guy who could be solid for them, I think the better flyer to take would actually be Montas, just because I don't know if his stuff is bad yet. But we'll have to wait and see there. Ultimately, the Yankees have had success with young pitching. We look at the few times they've kind of given young starters a chance, and they've done a decent job. Obviously, last year they didn't really have an opportunity to do that, but in the spot starts in which they did, we saw guys like JP Sears. They pitched really well. Clark Schmidt had a couple good starts here and there. Overall, I think you kind of want another veteran in there, but you don't want to break the bank for one. It'll be interesting to see how they do it. If they piece it together, they piece it together, but I think they'll add a starter, and I think that's kind of the safe way to do it.
Yeah, it definitely is. They're probably going to add a starter. I'm just curious to who it's going to be. Obviously, we've got you guys covered here on Fireside Yankees with all the options during the offseason. But for now, we hope that Severino can show some life over the next couple of weeks. I don't know if they're going to drop him entirely. I don't know what's going to happen here. But the unfortunate reality is they don't have a choice. They don't have anybody else. Rodon's coming back soon, so maybe they drop him to the bullpen. It's possible. But do you trust him in the bullpen? No. The season's kind of a wash anyway. You just start handing out more opportunities to Brito. You start handing out more to Randy Vasquez, and you just see what you got for the future, because that's really what the best case scenario is for the Yankees right now, is seeing what you can do with the future. And the more information, the more data points you have, the more knowledge you have, the better it's going to be to make these decisions, and the easier it's going to be to make these decisions. For now, it's hard to say that Brito or Randy Vasquez should be in the rotation long term, but if they can piece together some consistency, show some good improvement, take to the coaching, follow Matt Blake's kind of flow here, I think that we can see some growth and see some good positive numbers going into the offseason, which at least leaves us with a little bit of a silver lining. But guys, I'd love to hear your perspectives below on Luis Severino. Do you think that he should be extended for 1 year on a cheaper contract, see what he's got, if he can bounce back? Worst case scenario, you just cut ties and move on? Or do you think it's best to cut ties altogether, reset, both sides go their separate ways, get a fresh start, and then you kind of reallocate that money elsewhere? It could be maybe via a trade, taking on a contract, or going out into free agency and acquiring a player that maybe is coming off a down season themselves that could bounce back, and just leveraging that. There's a lot of options for the Yankees, and we'll continue to break it down for you as always. But as always, my friends, make sure to like and subscribe. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.